What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today I want to talk to you about the steps that I take to find the next big over-the-counter stock, which could give you a nice 5 or even 10x of your money. But at the end of the day, over-the-counter is very high risk, high return investments. So this is why you make sure you do your own due diligence. I am also going to be linking all the websites I view in this video in the description below. So make sure you do subscribe and pop over and take a look at all that information. But with that, let's get right to it. So I am on Ortex. I do use them for a lot of good compiled information, one of many that you will kind of see, but generally speaking, I like to look at this. So finscreener.org, easy way to find this is going to Google, type in OTC Screener, and it is the second hit. So at the end of the day, when it comes down to over-the-counter stocks, there's several different ways to invest, but regardless of all that, you typically want to look for ones that have a lot of volume, because again, you can get easily in and out without a substantial amount of due diligence or even looking at, because if you do get into a nice momentum play, you can easily make a lot of money very fast and get out. But again, when it comes down to that, there's several different things that you want to watch for. You want to look at the big money, what they are doing. And I am on unusual whales for this. You can see as far as the overall premium, the price, size, and the ticker. So this kind of does break down exactly what the big money is doing, and even small money, even $46 worth of a trade, or even $16,000, depending on whatever it is, or even $106,000. It clearly lays out exactly the stocks that big money is buying. So again, this is what you really need to look for. You can easily get in and out of a trade, and like I said, you can always just sort that based on the volume. So take that how you see that. When it comes down to it though, you can also couple that with Yahoo. So Yahoo does have a lot of good information, one of which is the volume. So you can always look at a lot of stocks, just the basic information, such as the volume and the average volume, the kind of the trend, and even technically as well the more recent news. When it comes down to over-the-counter stocks, news is the hardest thing. When it comes to actual companies that issue a lot of constant news, those typically are a little bit more higher end on the appreciation for the price wise, and you do get a little bit more higher volume. So a little bit more advantageous in that regard. But there is still a lot of other over-the-counter stocks, most likely as well the ones that are trending, that have absolutely no news. It is all based on pure speculation, and there's a lot of different sources from that, mostly from Twitter or just from random websites. But at the end of the day, if you are ever looking for the most concrete information, always check on either the company's website or the SEC. This is where the institutions and companies disclose all of their positions, everything, their earnings, their news. So this is a good way for information if you are looking to actually invest in the long term, because again, going back to this, technically, you don't always need to find one that has a lot of liquidity, because another very beneficial way to invest in OTC stocks is based on the fundamental business. Because keep in mind, Amazon, a lot of the big names all started from scratch, similar to a lot of these. A lot of these tickers right here could be the next big thing in roughly about a decade, and you could potentially invest on that now. Again, you just need to do a little bit more in-depth due diligence. So technically, a lot of those companies don't always have the most volume. So that's something that you need to keep in mind. Sometimes it might be substantially lower. For example, this. So CBDL. I'm not obviously advocating this, or I'm not a financial advisor at all, but when it comes down to this is largely linked to cannabis. Cannabis sector has been hit quite hard, but when that does rebound, this is going to flourish. So this might be a good investment if you are looking for a very cheap cannabis play. And typically, when the market cap is substantially lower, it does go up 10x very fast compared to a lot of the higher market cap ones. So that's something that you really need to keep in mind as well. But when it comes down to it though, shorts are also a very big part in what you need to invest in, because typically, again, this is for the ticker HCMC. This is obviously all random tickers. This is just, I'm pointing out the actual websites versus the stocks, but even in this case, you can see the shorts are getting in at very pivotal points, so causes a lot more volatility, and that typically is coupled with a lot of volume. So you can see HCMC right here is among one of the highest for that. So that's something that you definitely need to keep in mind. So in addition to that though, I do like to pop over to Interactive Brokers. They do have a lot of good information, and this is one of my main points of contact for kind of a compiling information. And like I said, if you are trying to find those good over-the-counter stocks that potentially could 10x based on in the future. Like I said, the early stage Amazons, those are fairly hard to find all good compiled information, but Interactive Brokers does have a lot of good information from many different sources that it compiles it. So I do have a link to them in the description below, and also I will put it in the comments. So highly suggest just click on the link, play around. It does have, like I said, a lot of good information that I typically use, especially as well when it comes down to a lot of those good fundamental companies that do and might have a lot lower volume. Those ones you might actually want to look at more so from a technical aspect, because typically when it comes down to those what people often call pump and dumps, which again referring back to a lot of these, which again typically have significant amount of volume, but based on almost no or possibly just speculative news, those potentially don't really aren't beneficial, I guess, for looking at technical analysis, because when it goes up as fast as it does, typically it skews all the indicators and just makes everything pretty much unreadable. But again, going back to that point, if you do find those good lower volume ones that has a good substantial business for the future, that is where you might actually want to tie in some technical analysis. Different ways to do that. You can always go back to Yahoo and looking on the charts. Again, this is a good indication on how you can do that. Typically, I have these as far as things that you need to look for. I have the 50, 100, 200-day moving averages, Bollinger Bands, RSI, stochastic, and momentum. So typically, I like to use that as a good indicator or as a benchmark, I guess you could say, because momentum, if you ever want to look at that, that shows number of buyers getting in or out. So typically, if you look more so on a grand scale of this, it shows the overall trend. Similarly, stochastic, whenever you see a black line above the red showing a nice bullish trend, it's starting to form. Again, when it comes down to over-the-counter stocks, you kind of have to take this with all a grain of salt, because if it is barcoding, such as that ticker like I mentioned, CBDL, it is trading between the 0001 and 0002, which again won't really amount to much on the technical front. But overall though, that is some of the good data points, at least to start off with. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on what you typically do or what you're kind of looking to achieve. If you are more entertained by these kind of pump and dumps or these kind of high volume ones, which again, a lot of these could amount to something very much real, but again, it is kind of hard to tell, especially with little news. But let me know what you're kind of interested in investing in. I can always address or talk on anything that you need to look at, or kind of if you have any questions as well, let me know in the comments below. But overall, that's kind of what the general concept of me, what I do, looking at over-the-counter stocks to try and find the next big thing. Keep in mind though, this does take a very long time, substantially more time than even looking, for instance, at Bank of America. You can easily see what Bank of America does, what their finances are, but when it comes down to over-the-counter stocks, for instance, 𝗖𝗎𝗓𝗧, you might find absolutely no news whatsoever. And you can even see the average quarterly volume is only 10 million versus today is currently roughly about 200 million, based on almost no news whatsoever. So it's one of those things, it's hard to invest in something with no news. But again, it's one of those things, right? That's over-the-counter stocks, some big winners, some big losers, high risk, high return investment. But at the end of the day, let me know your thoughts on all that in the comments below. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Greatly appreciate that. If you do like my channel, want to support the growth, take a look at my memberships, link in the description below, or just hit the join button at the bottom of the screen. With that, I appreciate you guys watching, and let's all make a lot of money on over-the-counter stocks.